Welcome back to your Daily Dose. My name is Robert, visiting Professor Jan. Is it Gru? Is that how I pronounce the last?
Grue, I'm good with either one.
The Norwegian, yeah, is there from the University of Oslo, joining us, and so appreciate the article we're discussing, and I'll put the link here in the description as well. As Able Nationalists Assemble on Disability in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Um, you mentioned story and telling one's own personal story, and also cultural stories. I think I heard you say. What is your attraction to stories, and why do they matter in both our development and perhaps our social link to each other?
Well, I think when we're talking about disability, stories are hugely important because there are so many um, very influential, very powerful storytelling frameworks about illness, about disability that we're not necessarily aware of. I mean, I wrote a memoir about this, about my own experience of growing up with a diagnosis, which also entailed a story. Turned out to be the wrong diagnosis, turned out to be the wrong story. But the main thing was that medical language and the ways in which medical language is expressed to kids growing up with disabilities can be incredibly constricting. It's a way of thinking about yourselves in terms of your diagnosis, which really can limit and restrict what sort of life you expect to be able to lead. That's one of the things that drew me into this.
That's amazing because that's the handicap that's not discussed. I think there is, whatever the physical reality and maybe the mental cognitive, thing that comes with whatever the perceived or accurately even diagnosed disability is. But then there's how it's portrayed by the medical authority, by the institution to, like you said, limit and perhaps crush the opportunity of the development of the person who or what they think they might become.
I think that's right. And I think one of the things that may happen with diagnosis is that it's self-reinforcing as the center of gravity in your life story. And so for some people, a lot of people, life becomes about managing your diagnosis, planning for your prognosis, and that becomes a more central life project than all of the other things that life can and should be about.
And we say often in the Parkinson's community, I may have Parkinson's, but Parkinson's doesn't have me, and that's a mantra to not make it, like you said, life about management, as opposed to where is the joy, where is the exploration, where are your dreams and opportunities of continuing to grow and become, not just survive. And that's a very different thing, survival based on trauma versus opportunity based on creativity and hope.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. There's also a story about successful disability or successful illness management, which is also in the current climate a story about productivity. So that
Mhm.
being successful at managing your condition means being able to work at all costs. My colleague here at the University of California, Sonora Taylor, has written a wonderful essay about this, about the right not to work, about prioritizing other things in one's life, including art and other pathways to meaning.
What's the name of that article?
I think the article is Why I Choose Not to Work. It's from a fair few years back, but the
I'll see if
person
I
who wrote it
can
is Sonora Taylor, an academic, activist, and artist.
I will see if I can find that and link that below, because I like that idea of not being defined by work, right? That work, and you mentioned in a capitalistic society in particular, says this is your identity and you are worthy if you can do this. And if you can't, then you are a burden, basically, worth less, perhaps. And I mean, what a terrible, terrible burden to carry, the idea of being a ward of the state and therefore dependent, to be
Yeah,
paid. Oh,
but particularly since disability as we know it is a category, a box, if you will, that was really constructed as the modern labor market came into being, so that people who are deemed disabled are the people who are unincludable in work life as it is currently managed. That has changed under different conditions. There were never so many disabled people under employment as in the US during the Second World War.
which is not maybe by mistake, when Stan Lee explodes right out of the Second World War. And, you're seeing a whole definition. And I believe your article touches on that, at least briefly, about the history and Stan Lee creating the Marvel cinematic, well, at that time, the comic book world. Yeah, wonderful. Let's come back and let's dive a little more into your article in the next Daily Dose, okay?